there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen invites me to her dinner party at a fancy restaurant, tries to stick me with the bill after we've all finished eating. After that, only do what's in my job title? Fine. Good luck paying employees. And after that, am I the jerk for wearing a wedding dress at a wedding? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to use anyone for their money. You mean like I've been doing to you for the past 4 years? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen invites me to her dinner party at a fancy restaurant, tries to stick me with the bill after we've all finished eating. So I, 25 female, went out for dinner with my sister-in-law, who's 28 female, her bachelorette party this past weekend. Between my sister-in-law and my husband, 26 male, sister-in-law has always been the golden child of the family. Growing up, my in-laws coddled her and gave her everything that she wanted, while my husband always got the short end of the stick. She was always the popular girl in school, cheerleader, lots of friends, all the boys loved her. While my husband was always a little more nerdy and got picked on quite a bit. Even my in-laws would give him a hard time about this and say he needed to be more like his sister. Well, fast forward to today. Both my husband and I went to top schools, got our degrees, and currently have very well-paying jobs in tech. I'm not trying to sound braggy, this is just for context, but we live a very, very comfortable life. Sister-in-law still currently lives at home with my in-laws where they foot all of her bills. She had my niece, who's 4, with her ex and is currently on marriage number 2. This past weekend, I was invited to this fancy upscale restaurant in my city for sister-in-law's bachelorette party. She just wanted to do a nice dinner. There were 8 of us in total. At the end of the dinner, the bill comes out and the waiter hands it to me. I'm sitting there confused for a second until sister-in-law speaks up and is like, "My parents and I were talking and we're thinking you and my brother can handle the bill for this as a wedding gift since you're not financially contributing to my wedding." I stared at her, shocked for a moment, and I was like, "And you didn't think to bring this up to me beforehand?" She started going off about how we're so well off, so what's the big deal? And she's sure my brother would have no issue with this. I asked her why her fiancé doesn't foot the bill, or my in-laws, and where in her right mind does she think it's okay to spring this on me? She started going on about how we're the wealthiest in both her and her fiancé's family, and that she didn't think I would act like this and would say yes. I told her, "Well, sorry, but I'm not your parents. Don't expect handouts from me." She called me selfish, and I called her an entitled brat, paid for my half of the bill, and I left. Well, as expected, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and even some of the cousins and aunts on my husband's side have been absolutely furious with me and are expecting me to apologize for my comments. I told them absolutely not. My husband is 100% on my side, and we are debating on not even going to the wedding. I was talking to my mom, and she thinks I took it too far with the comments and should just apologize to keep the peace. Am I the jerk? Info. The bill was close to $1,000. Not the jerk. Don't apologize. No matter how much money you make, you are not expected to 1. Contribute to your sister-in-law's wedding, 2. Foot the bill for an entire bachelorette party that you were attending as a guest, and 3. De-escalate her temper tantrum once she doesn't get her way. The burden of payment for a bachelorette party usually falls on the maid of honor and bridesmaids and is arranged for ahead of time, or the bride. Edit. And a far more common occurrence is that everyone pays their own way, but chips in for the bride so that she's taken care of. But again, that's settled way ahead of time. Not the jerk. I guarantee that you were only invited as a setup to try and make you pay. Don't go to the wedding, and I'd honestly consider how much contact you want to maintain with sister-in-law and your in-laws moving forward. It's clear they see you two as nothing but an ATM. Not the jerk. You were not asked beforehand. You were voluntold at the very moment the bill arrived. I'd have gone with, "Well, it's nice that you decided that without telling anyone, but I didn't bring my credit cards with me," and I'd leave. Only do what's in my job title? Fine. Good luck paying employees. So I work for a construction company as an inventory admin. My job is to basically schedule counts of our warehouse and input the numbers they give me for inventory. Then try to see what the problem is when the numbers on the last count and the current count don't add up. There's a little bit more to it, but I will not bore you with the specifics. The problem with this job is that when you've been doing it long enough and you're good at it, there's less work to do. In the beginning, when counting one rack out of 60 racks of material would take a few days, it was fine because I was always busy. But now that everything is in order, the entire warehouse can be counted in 3 days. This leaves me bored for most of the time. So to fix this, I studied up on our cloud-based ERP service that we use for all internal and external transactions and have become sort of an expert on it. Every single aspect of this company uses this ERP service to do their job. Timesheets, HR, payroll, accounting, scheduling, management, manufacturing, everything. It all runs through this ERP service. So it's very important that this service is up and running perfectly 24/7. I became so proficient in this service that our VP decided to cut ties with our consultants of the ERP because I could do what they did, but better, quicker, and much more cheaper. For reference, we were paying these consultants $5,000 a month just to be on standby if we needed them for some sort of problem that could arise from using this ERP, and had to dish out more money to fix those problems depending on how many hours of their own time was spent on fixing them. Not sure their exact rate, but it was something like $200 an hour, and they took weeks to fix anything, while I could fix the problem in time for my daily afternoon break. I never got an official job title or raise of any kind for being an expert on this service. The company just saw me being able to do it and let me fix things that happened so that they no longer needed this outside help. I wasn't too upset because it gave me something to do, so I was glad to help the company save money, even if none of that money fell my way. Skip ahead a few months. We now have a new warehouse manager, and someone in the warehouse messes something up in inventory by sending a bunch of materials to the wrong job with no records of it being shipped. We're talking $500,000 mess up here. In the same day, our ERP had an update that caused a bunch of bugs with our accounting department. So I decided to work on the ERP problem first because the warehouse mistake is more of a delay mistake and not actually stopping anybody from doing their job at the moment, while this accounting problem means our bills are not able to be paid. You can guess what kind of issues we will have if bills are not paid. The ERP bugs turn out to be quite big and numerous, so it ends up taking me a couple of days to figure it out. But I fix it before any bills are actually due and decided to take lunch a little early to celebrate a victory. Crisis averted. New warehouse manager storms into my office after I get back from lunch and is livid. Apparently, the bosses were pinning the blame on him for the warehouse mistake, and considering he's the one who oversees shipments and personnel in the warehouse, the blame is rightfully placed. He stays laying into me, asking why I haven't fixed the problem yet, yelling and screaming like a kid. I tried explaining that I was fixing an ERP issue and have not had time to look at the warehouse problem yet. He gets even more angry and notes that it's funny how I have time to take early lunches but not do my job. That started to tick me off, but I held my tongue and I kept calm about the situation. He then ordered me to only do what is in my job title and to leave the ERP BS to the people competent enough to handle it, as he put it. Since this guy was technically my supervisor, I had no choice but to obey. I asked him to send me that in writing, and he snarks and storms back into his office. 5 minutes later, I get an email stating that under no circumstances am I to work on anything related to ERP unless it involves inventory. Cue malicious compliance. I do nothing but inventory from that point forward, knowing darn well that we would be essentially coasting until we hit a problem that I would refuse to fix. Sure enough, not even a week later, I get an email from HR that some sort of bug in the ERP system was preventing them from accessing payroll to pay employees this week. I reply with an apology that I'm no longer able to work on ERP bugs due to supervisor and to refer to the ERP system help guide for further assistance. I knew the help guide was not going to help her in the slightest, but it was no longer my problem, so I was not going to deal with it. Skip a few days later to Friday. I checked my bank account in the morning before getting to work and laughed because there was no money deposited. That problem never got fixed. I hurry up and get to work, excited to see the chaos unfold, and what I was expecting was an understatement. When I show up to work, I see the entire warehouse staff of 50 people walking out of the front door. I stopped one and asked why they're leaving, and they replied with, "I didn't get paid today, so I'm not coming back until I do." I go into the office and see the warehouse manager in a panic. He has jobs that need material and nobody to load it onto trucks or deliver. I ask him if he needs help with anything, and he just screams at me to leave his office because he's getting tons of phone calls from superintendents of jobs asking why our material has not arrived yet. I pass by HR on the way to my office, and see a bunch of the bosses huddled up over her computer with angry and confused expressions on their faces. I guess trying to figure out the problem. I felt bad for her because it really was something out of her control, but I knew she would ultimately be okay because she had been there for so long that they would never fire her. When I get to my office, I see the VP waiting for me there. He has a very upset expression on his face. When we get inside, he demands to know why I did not fix the problem in HR when she emailed me about it. I replied that I'm no longer allowed to work on ERP problems as it is not in my job title. He gets the most shocked look on his face and asked why all of a sudden I had a change of heart. I show him the email from warehouse manager and I could see the dots connect in his head. He immediately storms out and I see him heading straight to the warehouse manager's office. They were in there for a few hours, but eventually he comes back to my office. He seems calmer now and asks me politely if I can fix the problem in HR and if I can resume fixing the ERP if needed. At this point, I liked the relief of responsibility and I told him I would only do it if he put it officially in my job title along with a raise. His calmness turned to anger again and he says, "I can't believe you," as he storms out and returns to his office. A few hours later, he sends out a mass email that he's hired the old ERP consultants to fix the problem and that next week, everyone would be paid for the money they are owed, along with the money they earned if they return to work. This one surprised me, as he would rather pay over $60,000 a year to consultants than give me a few extra bucks an hour for better work. I think he expected me to change my mind and just do it for my own paycheck, but I decided to wait because I knew how these consultants were, and if they managed to fix this problem in a week, I wouldn't believe it. Most of the warehouse staff agreed to return, but were still upset about not getting paid. Sure enough, next Friday comes around, nobody gets paid again. At this point, it's becoming a real problem, and the entire staff is becoming agitated. They have bills to pay. I even heard a bunch of the warehouse talking about some competitors nearby they could go work for. At this point, I even considered just fixing the problem because the warehouse didn't deserve to be treated like that due to poor management. Maybe I am the jerk here for this, but I'm severely underpaid and can barely afford my apartment. There's no reason I should do extra work for free. That same day, the VP returns to my office and hands me papers. These papers said that I would be promoted to a newly created position that dealt with inventory and ERP upkeep. It would be its own department and he would be my direct supervisor. Also came with a hefty raise. All I had to do was sign and agree. I looked up at him after reading the paper and he had the saddest look on his face. "Please just sign it. The consultant said it would take them weeks to get around to fixing it due to the high volume of clients they've taken on, and we can't keep skipping paychecks." I happily signed it and immediately got to work on the HR issue. Managed to even fix it that same day. It was just a simple problem with the permissions of HR and payroll in the ERP due to the update. Am I the jerk for wearing a wedding dress at a wedding? So my friend, 20, female, and I, 19, male, have been friends for a few years, and she recently got engaged. A week ago, I got a DM from her for a small costume party she was hosting as a celebration for her getting engaged. I asked if there was a theme, and she said there wasn't. I'm a cosplayer, so I had a lot of choices. I didn't want to rock up in an anime cosplay, so I thought it would be funny to go to an engagement party as the corpse bride. I arrived at her house yesterday, and everything seemed normal. A few people complimented my costume, and I was having a lot of fun. After 10 minutes, my friend's fiancé walked out in a black tuxedo and announced this was actually their wedding. Apparently, my friend saw a video of someone doing this and wanted to do the same. He asked us all to go to the backyard for the ceremony to begin. I went straight to him. I asked him if I should quickly go home and change my outfit and that I would get back before it started. He told me it was fine since I didn't know this was the wedding. I trusted him and followed everyone outside. They got married and everything seemed good. The reception was just in their house again, so everyone just walked back inside and picked up where they left off. I tried talking to my friend and celebrating with her, but she kept making excuses to not talk to me. I assumed it was just because she was tired from the big day and wanted some alone time. I didn't bother her after that, and the party soon ended. I got home, and half an hour passed when my phone started getting notifications. I checked it, and it was my friend texting me. She was going off on me and telling me how I ruined her wedding. I was really confused and asked her what I did. That only made her more angry. She told me it was basic knowledge not to wear a wedding dress to a wedding. I reminded her that I had no idea it was a wedding, and that I asked her now husband if I should go and change, and he said no, it was fine. She didn't respond, but I got a text from her husband. He asked why I would tell her he said it was fine. I told him he said it was fine. Then he said how I should have changed anyways, and it's my fault that the two are now fighting over this. I've tried texting her that I was sorry, and if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. I woke up today and saw her and her husband have blocked me on everything. So, am I the jerk for not changing out of the wedding dress when I found out it was actually a wedding? Edit. I'm a guy. I cosplayed the character Emily from The Corpse Bride and had blue paint all over. I'm also Australian, and I've never heard of a costume party meaning fancy. Everyone was dressed up in funny costumes. Not the jerk. The facts of this are pretty simple. 1. You were told this is a costume party, so you wore a costume. 2. When asked about a theme, you were not given any restrictions. 3. They sprung a surprise wedding on you. 4. Once you realized this, you asked the groom if you should go home and change, and the groom said no. They had multiple chances to get you to change, and they didn't take any of them, so getting mad with you after the fact doesn't make sense. Update. Would I be the jerk if I kept my dad's dog against my girlfriend's wishes? I, 32 male, and my girlfriend Ellen, 33 female, have been together for 2 years, 7 months, and have been living in the same, my house, for 8 months. The issue in question arose when my dad, who's 58, gave me his dog, Mila, who's 6. She was a rescue, so we don't know her exact age. Before I had even met Ellen, I made a promise with my dad to take Mila in if he couldn't care for her, which is something I discussed with Ellen before she even moved in, and she had no complaints back then. My dad fell ill 4 months ago, and of course, I took Mila in. He's not getting better, so he asked me to officially adopt her, and I agreed. Ellen was furious that I made this decision without consulting her, despite me having told her about the arrangement in the past. Although I feed, walk, groom, and manage all of Mila's needs, financially and otherwise, Ellen said she had to put her foot down on the issue. I asked Ellen if there were any specific reasons she was so opposed to us keeping Mila, and she stated the following. She said that since she works from home full-time, whereas I'm closer to 50-50, that I can't understand how much having a dog around affects her work. She makes clay art, crockery, that sort of thing. Having a dog is expensive, and it will be a drain of our finances, which are not joined, I'll note, and I've paid for everything so far. It will make it more difficult for us if we ever want to have a kid. Our house is not huge, so it doesn't make sense to have a big dog like Mila. She has friends who have severe dog hair allergies, and she doesn't want them to feel they can't visit anymore. None of her complaints had anything to do with any bad behavior. Mila does not jump on people or furniture, bite, bark at visitors. She will follow commands to leave a room if they're given to her, etc. I see that these are reasonable objections to not taking Mila in, but I stayed firm in my position. Ellen said that if I loved her, I would make other arrangements, and at this stage, I was getting a bit angry, so what I said next may have been a little harsh. I told her, love has nothing to do with this. My first responsibilities are my dad and Mila, and nothing you say will convince me to send her away. If you seriously can't cope with that, you can get out of my home. Ellen burst into tears at this and left to go stay with her mom, citing that I clearly need time to think this over. A bunch of her friends who know me have been telling me that I'm a total jerk for prioritizing a dog over my girlfriend of nearly 3 years, but my own friends have been telling me to stand my ground. Ellen has been radio silent, has not come home, and is not responding to my texts. So I guess I'm looking for some unbiased opinions on the matter. Would I be the jerk if I kept Mila? Update. So I guess it's customary to give an update on these things, and since a few people started following me after my previous post, I figured I ought to finish the story. It's only been a few days, but a lot has happened. Ellen finally agreed to meet up earlier today. Ironically, though people were telling me to break up with her, she ended up doing it first. We talked over coffee for a few hours, and what many of you suggested was true. Her real reason for not wanting to keep Mila was separate from all of the ones she offered me. She said that she thinks that I've just changed too much since we got her. And when I asked what she meant, she stated that I'm less passionate and engaged with her than before. I don't really know if I can do anything with that, whether it's to do with the stress of my father's condition or not, but she basically said I'm not the person she fell in love with anymore. She's packing up her things even as I type this. It's hard in a way that I can't describe, like all of a sudden I'm losing all the people I love. But I also know that I can't control her decision to leave if that's what she wants to do. In brighter news, Mila is doing well. Some of you were concerned that Ellen might spirit her away, but she's still very much around. I brought her to the hospital park area to see my dad, and she was over the moon to be with him again, so I'll probably keep that up as long as he's able. I've also taken up the recommendations to find a doggy daycare for the days I'm in the office. I'll start dropping her off there next week, and if all goes well, I'm sure she'll make plenty of friends. There isn't much else to say other than thank you. There's been an enormous amount of love and support coming from this subreddit. People were sending dozens of heartfelt messages. I even had to turn my phone off because of all the notifications. I wanted to let you know that all of your kind words mean so much to me, even if I felt a little too awkward to respond to most of the messages. It's a strange and difficult time all around for Mila and I, but we'll try to navigate it as best we can. So basically, she's blaming the dog when it sounds to me like her real issue is a stunning lack of empathy for the fact that it sounds like you're losing your dad, which, as someone who's going through something similar with an aging parent, I'm so sorry, OP. Seriously though, this is not about a dog. This sounds a lot more like her expecting you to put her before literally everything, even when she didn't object to what you told her before she moved in, and even when she knows you're losing your dad and Mila is a part of your dad. As much as it hurts right now, honestly, she's showing you who she is. She's showing you that she isn't up for any kind of flexibility when things get hard or sad. I know it's hard now, but in the end, think about things like having kids with her and so on. If she thinks the dog is disruptive and reduces direct engagement and passion, just wait until she has a kid. And no, becoming a parent doesn't mean that you are no longer an individual with wants and needs, but it does mean that you have to be flexible and willing to reprioritize at times. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my niece's wedding after she attempted to sabotage mine? I'll be honest, my sister and I never had the best relationship. She's 15 years older than me, so maybe we didn't have much of a connection, and she's always been resentful towards me. She's treated me like an outcast and would often turn her kids against me and encourage them to insult me, disrespect me, and treat me like dirt. My mom would always tell me to be the bigger person, so I would always forgive when they would apologize or act all nice again. During lockdowns, my sister and her husband, not my niece's father, kicked her out because my sister was having many mood swings. She has 4 other kids and got them to participate in kicking out my niece. She called me and I quickly went to pick her up, and I met her on the curb with trash bags and with my sister refusing to open the door. So I took her in my home where she stayed for 6 months, and she even secured an apartment. Once my niece, who was 20 at the time, got her apartment, my sister and her husband convinced her to move back in, and my niece did. And then the same niece turned on me, and I felt very sad because she was in my home, and I did everything for her when her own mom discarded her. Fast forward to 2021. She does the same thing with her 16-year-old son, and he called me, and again, I picked him up and I let him stay with me. At the time, my now husband and I were planning a wedding, and of course, regardless of our differences, there was no way I couldn't invite my sister and her kids. Also, it was during the height of lockdown, so we were very limited and the church only accepted close family. When I invited my sister, her and her kids ridiculed me. My sister even said that my attitude is too disgusting to get married. They're not coming because I don't deserve to get married. They even blocked me, except my niece, who promised me that she'll be there and promised to act as a witness. The day of, she didn't show up. No call, no nothing. Thankfully, the photographer was nice enough to be a second witness for us. My mom called my niece asking why she did this. My niece said, "I don't even know what kind of wedding it is. I don't see the point in all this," then hung up. I was broken and in tears. I know my sister put them up to it, but I thought my niece would have risen above it, given all that I've done for her when my sister, her mom, did what she did to her. I moved on, but I vowed to never speak to them again. My husband and I are happily married, and we have a new baby, and we're thriving. Now, my niece has met someone, and she's getting married. My mom told me to mark my calendar because we're going. I refused and reminded her of what they did on my wedding. My mom told me to stop living in the past and be the bigger person. I even cried to her, and she gave me a blank stare, then told me that no one thinks about her and that I'll regret my actions when she's gone. She said I'm being incredibly selfish and bitter, and she's shocked that I'm not over it. I'm still refusing to go. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. At every turn, you have acted with love, compassion, kindness, and honor. And in every instance, it was thrown back in your face, usually after costing you considerable time, energy, and money. Standing up for yourself and your right to basic respect and dignity is not bad. I'm sorry that you've been treated so bad, and even more sorry that your mom has essentially betrayed your trust by downplaying your hurt and siding with them. You're building a new family now with your husband and your sweet new baby, and your friends. This new family will cherish you and be grateful for all of your kindness. Stick with your new family and let the family of origin go. There's no place for you there. Go where you're loved and stay there. Not the jerk. Be the bigger person is a BS way of telling you to continue to accept the mistreatment of others. Skip the wedding 100%. But not because of your wedding, but because they are toxic people who don't treat you with respect. Just because they had the good fortune to share genetic material with you does not mean that you have to keep them in your life. You're an adult, you're a wife and a mother. It's okay to remove people from your life who don't treat you with love and respect. It's okay to remove toxic people, even toxic family members. Go low or no contact with them and go be happy. Surround yourself with people that lift you up, that bring joy to your life. Go be happy. My Karen sister is trying to steal my fiancé. I'm 24, female, and my sister, who's 23, had my nephew, Joe, during her first year in college. The father is absent in his life and only pays child support. She has always hated the idea of my nephew growing up without a father figure, and since our only brother is 17 and our dad passed 10 years ago, she dated recklessly for a while and introduced him to a bunch of dudes. 3 years ago, I met my now fiancé, Gabriel, 28, male. He's really sweet and he adores my family. He's financially stable and is good with kids, has a bunch of nephews on his own, and comes from a good big family. We've decided to be child-free, and if something happens to my sister and a few of Gabe's siblings, we're meant to be their legal guardians. For the past year, my sister has grown comfortable with pushing Joe around Gabe. She always invites him to my nephew's activities, which is fine, but she acts as if Gabe were her guest, and I'm his +1, not otherwise. Plus, my brother used to be the one who got invited, and he's not anymore. She asks Gabe to drive her and Joe to places, and my mom pointed out how they look like a family when he does it. She jokes about how much of a dad Gabriel is for Joe, and she had the audacity to ask him once if he was comfortable with adopting Joe, but she was drunk, so I'll give her that. Neither Gabe or I are comfortable with this. He doesn't know how to push it aside without hurting their feelings. My mom has told my sister countless times how this is inappropriate, but my sister always gets defensive and says that Joe chose him and is not her fault. Things blew up last weekend when Joe asked Gabriel if he could call him dad because mom said it was fine. My sister was looking at them with the biggest smile on her face, and I could notice how my mom and my brother were expecting his answer. Neither of them agree with it though. He sat Joe on his knee and kindly explained how he wasn't his dad or even a dad figure, that he was Aunt OP's soon-to-be husband, and that made him his favorite uncle. But even if he wasn't his dad, he would never leave him and they'll always be best friends. Joe, being the sweet kid he is, laughed and smiled and said that it was okay. Then he ran to the living room to play with something. I think the situation resolved itself okay, but my sister didn't like it and started to fight with us. My mom kept telling her to shut up, but she was saying things like, "What's wrong with you two? How can you say no to a little kid? He sees you as a father, so you should be proud of that." I had enough, and I told her that Gabriel wasn't Joe's dad and that she needed to stop acting as if he was, because it was honestly embarrassing. She called me a selfish jerk and said that I was jealous of her kid. I just rolled my eyes and we decided to leave after. She later sent me a text saying that it was best if we step out of Joe's life for a while, or we will end up confusing him because he doesn't understand that Gabriel is not his dad. But as far as I could see, he understood it pretty well. ETA. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that we are already Joe's legal guardians, but if something happens to my sister, and we hope it never does, we'll be taking care of him. Also, my sister is not right, I agree with that, but I doubt she's ever violent. Not the jerk, but you know that your sister wants your fiancé, right? My dad always sides with his girlfriend and her daughter. My parents split custody. It's pretty random. Some days I'm home, and sometimes I'm by my dad's. I'm 15, female. Dad started dating Jane a while ago, maybe a year. She has a daughter, Mandy, that's 12 or 13. Then they started spending a lot of time at my dad's. They have their own apartment, but they're still always with him. The first time they stayed over when I was there, somehow Mandy ended up in my bed. Her mom has this cot/bed thing that she bought by my dad's for her, but somehow I woke up in the middle of the night and she was in my bed. I kicked her out. Then my dad and Jane said That was mean, and I have a full anyway, so I should share. There's other stuff. I have a chair in my dad's living room I got for my gift. It's comfy, and when I move out, it'll go with me. Well, Mandy always wants to race for the chair. Even when I win the race, my dad makes me let her sit in it because they're guests. So I end up sitting on the floor because my dad has a recliner and Jane lays across the couch. So I stay in my room instead. My dad has tried to get me to come out of my room and be with them. But why when I have to sit on the floor like a dog? He keeps saying I'm being a difficult teenager. That's not it though. One time my mom and I went and did some stuff before she dropped me off. She had brought me a blanket that had my favorite team's logo on it. I was excited to sleep with it. Stupid, I know. So she let me take it to my dad's. My dad made me share it with Mandy because it wasn't fair that I got something and Mandy didn't. It's not just the blanket it's happened with. It's anything that I have to share. But if Mandy has something I'd like to use, he tells me it's hers, and if she doesn't want to let me use it, she doesn't have to. One time, Mandy was reading one of my books, and Jane and my dad started fighting. Jane wanted to leave, so Mandy wanted to take my book, but I said no, so she wouldn't leave. My dad yells at me to, "Just let her have it." They made up, so I got it back, but if they didn't, I would have lost one of my favorite books. My dad and I had plans to go ice fishing, just him and I, something we've done since I was 7. Well, he brought Jane and Mandy along. All they did was complain. "It's too cold. Fish are gross. This is boring." So we left early. He said, "Sometimes you have to compromise." When I got home, I was mad. My mom was annoyed and called him, and they argued, and he talked to me and repeated his compromising crap. I was supposed to go back to his place a few days later, but decided I didn't want to go. I never even spent time with just him anymore, so what's the point in going there? I told my mom, and she said it was my choice. So we told him. He said, "I'm just used to being an only child, and I can't be spoiled my whole life. And I can't run away whenever there's a problem." Well, since then, his family is trying to get me to go back too. Am I the jerk for not wanting to visit my dad anymore? Edit. Some people have said to go to family counseling. He won't do that. He put me in therapy a few years back because I wasn't doing my homework. Seriously, that's the reason. Then when my therapist started calling him out on his parenting, he didn't want to go anymore, and my mom had to take me. My therapist even called him to try to talk to him, and my dad ignored it. Not the jerk. Your dad is failing you as a parent. Go back, with your mom waiting, and pack up every important item you have at your dad's so that Mandy can't get her grubby little hands on your stuff. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.